This is Heritage Words, a podcast about the words we've inherited from our ancestors and the meaning they bring to our lives. Heritage Words is produced by the HUC Jewish Language Project, which raises awareness about Jewish ancestral diversity through the lens of language. I'm your podcast host, Sarah Bunin Benor. Our guest today is Stephanie Ives. Stephanie has worked in a number of professions, including as a lawyer and a Jewish professional and a Jewish educator, and she's currently the head of school at Beit Rabban in New York. And today we're going to talk to her about her background with various Middle Eastern countries. Let me say that again. Today we're going to talk about her background in various Middle Eastern countries, and we're going to hear about her heritage words. So Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here.
So tell us first about where you grew up and where you live now.
Great. I grew up in Los Angeles. It turns out not far from where you are right now. And I have lived on the East Coast since I was 17, in New York, in Boston, a couple of stints in Israel. But I grew up in Los Angeles.
Okay. And did you grow up involved in a Jewish community?
Yes, I grew up not just involved, but like in a fully immersive I basically grew up not involved in anything but a Jewish community is actually the answer. I grew up Orthodox in the Fairfax area and attended all-girl single-sex Jewish day schools through high school. Then I left, I went to ULA for high school. I graduated after 11th grade, went to Stern College for Women, spent a couple years learning in a yeshiva in Israel, came back, and that was sort of the Jewish education trajectory. Really thought I would never in a million years wind up by choice in a Jewish day school long term, and now it turns out it's my natural habitat.
Oh wow! And where were your ancestors from?
Yeah. So I'll tell you where they were actually from and what I had thought growing up, which I think is kind of funny. My mom was born in Tunisia. She was born during the war, and she moved to France when she was about 8, actually before France, before Tunisia got its independence, but it was in the rumbling stages. And then she moved from Paris to America when she was 20 with her family. And my father, I thought was born in Baghdad till I was about 10, when during a Shabbat meal, somebody mentioned that he and I were born in the same hospital, Cedar Sinai, which was Cedars of Lebanon back in the day. And I was just like, I am sorry, what are you talking about? Dad is American? And it turns out, yeah, he was born in LA in 36, a year after his family came. Most recently, they had been in Surabaya, Indonesia. And before that, they were in Burma and Myanmar, in Rangoon, where his parents got married. And before that, his parents were actually both born in Baghdad and happened to be first cousins. But my mom's family was both Tunisian and Libyan. You know, there was a lot of sort of cross-border movement over the centuries. And they were there as far back as they know, with like a story that they had come from Spain. That's like sort of their inherited story, but we don't really have any proof of that, but that's definitely our family story. And my father's family is from Iraq, from Baghdad, actually. There's some family from Basra for as far back as they know. And my father deeply believes that his family was there since the destruction of the first temple.
Got it. Now, why did you think he was born in Baghdad?
Well, if you met my father, you too would think that he was born in Baghdad. I just like, it's, my parents, I grew up in a family that had a lot of languages. around the table. My husband, who is Ashkenazi, and all of his grandparents were born in America. Like I literally had never met anybody until him who had that set of circumstances. The first time he came to my house for some chag, he was like, "Oh, it's the United Nations." I didn't realize that. I was like, "Oh yeah, it's more like the shuk outside the United Nations kind of situation." So there were a lot of languages. There was definitely Arabic, multiple dialects of Arabic, with the North African really sort of primary. There was French. There was some Italian. There was also, my dad is bilingual in Spanish and English. And it just like there was constant language switching. But my dad, he has such a deep pride in his history. And I didn't know it at the time. I just thought he presented like a Jewish man, but actually he presents like an Arab man. But I thought Arab was Jewish and Jewish was Arab. I didn't know any non-Jewish Arabs. And my mom, who grew up in an environment in Tunisia that wasn't in the Jewish area, it was called the Hara, kind of like the ghetto. She didn't live there. She lived in a more sort of colonialist environment, and then moved to France, and would never in a million years define herself as Arab, and didn't even start speaking Arabic until they moved to France. So like I just assumed my dad was really an immigrant, but he wasn't.
Wow, that's interesting. So when you said he presented as an Arab, what does that mean?
Okay, so first of all, there are all these things that I didn't know these were things that Arab men do. I just thought they were things that my dad and my grandfathers and the other men who I went to synagogue with did. And then the first time I like traveled to Egypt, my mind was blown, right? So for example, and they're little cues that you wouldn't, you don't know if you don't know, but like anybody on this who listens to this who has an Arab father knows what I'm talking about when I say the plastic sandals. There's like this plastic sandals that everyone wears, like playing sheshbesh, playing backgammon all the time, drinking hot tea when it's 100 degrees outside. A lot, and also a lot of Arabic, just a lot of Arabic, a lot of cultural references, the smells. My grandfather used to walk around with cloves in his pockets, like his suit pockets. My dad does things like that. I don't know if those are some examples.
Yeah.
And also the way that he prayed, I spent a lot of time in synagogue with my family, and the prayer it's a very different prayer. It's like than Ashkenazi prayer. It's a chanting prayer, less than a singing prayer, and it's melodically Arabic, and he speaks Hebrew. His Hebrew sounds like that too.
And did you attend an Iraqi synagogue?
Actually, no. So when I like to joke that my father was the first Jew in Los Angeles because he's 89. And if you live in Los Angeles, there aren't a lot of 89-year-olds who are born there who are Jewish. His parents had come the year before, and his uncles were here earlier. And one of his uncles was the founder of Kal Yosef, which is the Iraqi shul to this day. I think it's the first Sephardi shul in LA. And by the time I came around, I'm the youngest, my parents became more Orthodox in their practices. So they no longer traveled on Shabbat, etc. And that was too far. So we went to the local Sephardi shul called Magen David on Melrose. I have a lot of stories about that. And it was a really funny mix of like, if you're looking from the outside, everyone's Sephardi. On the inside, everyone was fighting all the time about nusach and the way pronunciation was going to happen. But there were Moroccans and Tunisians and Libyans and a lot of Syrians and like a smattering of Iraqis, and then Indian, like a lot of different languages. Like you just didn't hear English at Kiddush.
And then you went to schools that were predominantly Ashkenazi, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so how did you reconcile the two nuschaot or the two approaches to prayer?
Well, I have a lot of sadness about some of that. I'm sorry, one second. I have a lot of sadness about some of that because I think I allowed certain things to fall by the wayside in terms of like the depth of the culture. And wait, Sarah, I'm sorry about this. I got to close out because I'm getting all these.
Okay.
So I grew up in a heavy Ashkenazi environment. I went to Ashkenazi schools. There was the Maimonides school that was founded around when I was little, but I'm not really sure why I didn't go there. I think because the school I went to was down the block from where I lived. And we became Orthodox in the process of attending the school. My brother is 7 years older. He's the oldest. So in becoming observant in that way, in the sort of technical, like with a lot of emphasis on technical laws and measurements and following rules, that came through an Ashkenaz lens. And I will just say there were so much arguments in our house around that, even around things like we just assumed our parents didn't know things because they weren't educated Jewishly the way we were. But it turns out so much of it was actually Sephardi halacha that is different than Ashkenazi halacha. And my parents had a mimetic tradition. Like my mother learned in her mom's kitchen, and her mom's rules conformed to Sephardi halacha. But I didn't know that there was that. So,
can you think of some examples of that?
Yes. This is such a funny and ridiculous example. So there are a lot of rules about heating up food on Shabbat, and what percentage of the food is liquid versus solid. And you can reheat something that was already cooked that was solid, but you can't reheat something that was cooked that was liquid. And we were raised in a school where like the ultimate sort of practice was really knowing the minutia. And I remember my brother having these big arguments with my parents that I, participated in years later about you can't heat that up on Shabbat because it has liquid in it. And actually, I remember getting to yeshiva years later and starting to learn about Rav Ovadia Yosef, who was the Rishon LeZion, the chief rabbi at the time, the Sephardi chief rabbi of Israel, who I'd met because every time he would be in LA, we'd go and I would kiss his hand and wait in line to meet him and whatnot. And someone introduced me to his book of responsa, which I didn't know. I had no idea, And then I learned about all of his responsa on cooking on Shabbat. And it turns out Sephardim heat up liquid. It's such a funny little thing, but it represented so many things in that, like the assumption that your parents' culture is less than, that it's backwards, that it's not precise, that it's not right.
So were there other non-Ashkenazi students in your school?
Yeah, there were a smattering, but the educators were all Ashkenazi. Everything we learned was very, very strictly Ashkenazi. There was a lot of pride in my family about being Sephardi, and it was sort of as it was like sort of distinct from the people around us. So I definitely grew up feeling a pride in that difference, but I don't know that my siblings felt that. And there were always like, weird comments periodically, like things that they're so comical that I can't believe they were said, like, but the Ives are different, literally like straight out of a book, it's like a page of like a trite racist dialogue about Sephardim. Actually those things still happen. I hear them. I live in a very Ashkenazi world. My life has changed because when I hit my 20s and like had a sort of reckoning with my feminist self and what I needed Jewishly as a woman, I recognized that I was not going to be Orthodox and wanted to be egalitarian, progressive, etc. And there wasn't a space for that in Mizrahi or Sephardi lived Judaism at the time. Now it's really different. I think I could still be Sephardi today in practice and like And so I kind of left, right? Like I never prayed again in Sephardi congregations. And my life became pretty Ashkenazi. Also, like it went into sort of a lot of more of the academic Jewish spaces, etc. I married an Ashkenazi man. I married the most Ashkenazi man I could find by mistake, but still. And I hear funny things all the time still. I even hear it as a head of school. Like I'll hear people talk about their communities, like as heads of school and the Syrians and the this and that. And I pointed out, but I always find it really surprising that there's an awareness of like embrace of diversity, but somehow there's still sort of a mocking or even like when I got married, I remember there was like a small group of wonderful people who are friends of my husband's family, who I adore, who referred to me as the Sephardi princess.
Ooh.
And I know it's funny because also I was like, I am not a princess. But then I did things like host a henna that was so over the top and crazy that it felt like, it was almost like, my big fat, well, everyone referenced my big fat Greek wedding at the time. And I literally was providing that to people who had never experienced it, but also it was authentic for us, right? So I don't know. So I don't even remember what your question was, but I have sadness and shame that I haven't held on to it as deeply as I would like to. And in preparation for this, because when you asked me to come on, I told you I'm not sure I have what to say, right? And I have a lot of people I really respect in Jewish leadership today who are doing so much to preserve and raise up Sephardi Mizrahi voices. And I don't see myself as one of those people, and you pushed and said, come and you'll have something to talk about. It turns out this is like a really great therapy session for me.
Oh,
So
good.
I gave myself an assignment. Do you want to hear about it?
Yes, let's hear about the assignment.
I sat down and I was like, I'm going to write down every Arabic word I remember from childhood. And then I'm going to read them to my children and find out which resonate with them and which they know. And I'm also going to look them up because I don't know how to read or write Arabic. So I don't actually know what's a real word and what's like a word my mom changed. I also don't know if something is Arabic or if it's maybe another language in my house that I'm just not familiar with, right? So I went on to ChatGPT and I got through about 50 words, which I thought was pretty impressive because I don't speak Arabic.
Oh my gosh. So those were all words you had heard in your home growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And each one I said to ChatGPT in different ways until it gave me a definition in Arabic. And then I would ask questions like, wait, how do you say this in Iraqi Arabic? And how do you say this in Tunisian Arabic? And so it was like an incredible experience for me. And then I posted it on our family. I posted on our family's WhatsApp, and my parents are great grandparents now many times over. And it was funny which words came up. All of the grandkids, I first said, tell us, what are the words that you learned from Nona Nona? What are all the Arabic words? Now, a whole subset of my nieces and nephews are deep Ashkenazi, like yeshivish Ashkenazi. And here are the list, okay, that everyone got mashallah, obviously, which means, oh, like how proud are we of you? It's, mashallah, you say this to kids. Everybody had rochena, ayunina. These are words of endearments. Like you're like my soul, you're like my eyes. And then there were a couple of like hilarious, random words. Everyone knew flus, which means money. And my husband, I realized, and I like didn't realize this. He uses that word every time we're out, like we're traveling. He's something Juflus, and I don't even realize that he does. And then there were a few like really funny like curse words. But most of the things, and my daughter, the only thing, she's the youngest, the only thing of my 50 expressions that she knew was what you say when someone sneezes.
Which is what?
Tayesh tfusu techel arus or arusa. And that means you should be healthy, you should be prosperous, and you should get engaged.
You say that when someone sneezes, only if they're single?
Yeah, you say tayesh tfus if they're already partnered. Unless, I mean, maybe you don't like their partner. I can imagine.
Wow. Okay. Well, we might have to ask you how to spell those. Those are great. And what were some of the curse words?
Okay, I'll tell you some good ones. Hold on. Oh, this was a great one. Fachzedeinik, may your eyes fall out. But it has a story. My mom always told this story. You know, Arabs they don't like compliments to their children because it's seen as ain hara, as like evil eye. And even in Israel today, you could see this happen. It happened to me, and I was like so angry. I gave a compliment to this like baby, her mom, and this just happened a few weeks ago, and she started saying things under her breath about how the baby was ugly, and I was like, no, ain hara. But in any event, so my brother was born. He's in the hospital. My grandmother was there. My mom was there, and her really good friend, who's an Ashkenazi woman, parents were survivors. She was born in a TP camp, came and was talking about how beautiful this baby was. And my grandmother was whispering repeatedly under her breath, "Fachzedeinik, fachzedeinik, fachzedeinik. May your eyes fall out. May your eyes fall out. May your eyes fall out." And so this is a story. Like
it sounds a little too close to an American curse word, an English curse word, right?
Yeah, it kind of does. I never thought about that actually. So that was a good one. There was a bunch of other ones. There's also, the kids all knew awafi, which awafi is what you say after someone burps. Be healthy. So
wow. Okay. Great. And wow, so there were 50 words on your list. And when you put them into ChatGPT or whatever, did that work? Like it actually told you what variety of Arabic they were from?
It was wild. Yes, it works. I could not believe it worked. And then my mother corrected the spelling in transliteration, which I thought was funny, but she did correct the spelling in transliteration.
And did it turn out that most of them were North African, Iraqi, or a combination?
Most of them were North African that had like a variation. You know, ChatGPT will tell you the different ways to say it. So what I did was I would say a word like Majnun, which means you're crazy. That's a classic. Like anybody who has an Arab grandmother knows the word Majnun. And then it would tell you like, oh, and I don't think this is actually a good example because I think it's Majnun all the way across, and in Syrian Arabic and in Iraqi Arabic and in Palestinian Arabic, if you ask, how do you say this? How do you say crazy in other words, in other dialects?
So yeah, that's great, except that Judeo-Arabic in Iraq in particular, in Baghdad, is pretty different from Muslim Arabic, right? Did that come up, or since this was mostly North African, it didn't really come up?
I asked for what is the difference on ChatGPT. This was not a good answer. You can try it, of Judeo-Arabic and Judeo-Arabic in Iraq, because I've heard that, but I don't really know it because my mom's was predominant. My mom's Arabic, and my dad's mother died young. So his parents they were less part of the family life. So I don't know it, but I've always heard, he always said that it's really different. And they always are correcting each other. But I asked ChatGPT what the difference was, and I didn't get like anything that seemed right. I also don't really know, and you probably do know. My mom professes that her Arabic is like a Judeo-Arabic, but I think it's just Arabic. I think it's just North African Arabic.
Well, it's a continuum, right? So, and I think in Tunisia, in parts of Tunisia, it was pretty different, like in Djerba, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
But my understanding is that the most different variety of Judeo-Arabic from its local Muslim counterpart is in Baghdad. But I think that's also the case for parts of Morocco, Tunisia, and maybe elsewhere. But anyway, I think it's really interesting that most of your Arabic words came through your mom.
Yeah.
And so you said that maybe because your dad's didn't have so much access to his mom's language, but wasn't his dad also from Iraq?
Yeah, but he was kind of less involved in our life. The other thing is my dad has a real capacity for language. He speaks multiple languages. Um, and he kind of can randomly have a simple conversation in languages you don't know he speaks, that he never learned. He never formally learned Spanish, and he really is bilingual.
How
So
did he learn it from friends in LA?
um, the question of how my dad has learned anything is like a fascinating. He was a farmer. He didn't grow up on a farm, and he didn't learn agriculture. And he was a successful commercial farmer. He also worked since the age of 5, and I'm not quite certain how much schooling he made it through. So I can't answer that question because I don't like fully understand his brain, but I do know that he will randomly speak to somebody in Dutch and in Hindi. Uh,
Wow.
it's really crazy. Um, and so I suspect also he probably was able to pick things like there was French in my house all the time, and somehow he was part of those conversations
Why was there French in your house?
because my mom's Tunisian French.
And did she speak it with her siblings or
Yes,
with
she spoke it to us. That was my first language.
Oh,
And
wow.
my siblings can speak French. I really don't have a lot of language confidence, or what I don't think I have an aptitude for language, and I lost it. But also I think that by the time I came around, they just like assimilated into American more. And like my older siblings we spoke in English. My grandmother didn't really speak English. She passed away in 2009, and she came here in 63. So she lived in America for a very long time, not really speaking English, but but she did know what was happening on the ABC soaps every single day and could retell you in French. I'm not sure how.
Wow. So you learned French from your mom to some
Yeah.
extent. And I think that's pretty common to have a birth order effect where the older kids know the immigrant language better than the younger
Yes.
kids do. Do you remember words? I mean, the words you've been telling us are from Arabic. What about
Yeah.
French? Do you have French heritage words too that
For
you
sure.
still
For
use?
sure.
Yeah.
When I imagine my mom screaming at me, it's only in French. And when I am around people who speak French and are getting irritated at their kids, I get like anxious, you know. And all my friends also know the phrase "Ça suffit, Steph-" like Stephanie would say this to me.
Wait,
French,
say that again.
"Ça suffit, Stephanie."
Ah,
Stop it, Stephanie. French was more predominant in my home. And I had an aunt who was Tunisian French, whose French was much stronger than her Arabic. And I don't even know if she really speaks Arabic. And I had an uncle who was Ashkenazi and a survivor actually, but who spoke French because he grew up in Montreal, something like that, like something through Canada. He spoke French. So there was just constant French everywhere. Um, and and my grandparents spoke French and English. No, French and Arabic. And my grandfather also spoke English, not like a super strong English, but definitely spoke English. And my grandfather on my dad's side, since he grew up in Baghdad and he was educated in India, and this was under the British Empire. I mean, he was born under the Ottoman Empire, but he grew up under the British Empire. He spoke fluent English. My grandmother, this is like, you're going to love this tidbit. My dad's mom never learned to read. She wasn't taught to read. She came to America and her kids taught her to read from Los Angeles Times, and she could only read print, newsprint.
Mm.
She couldn't
Wow.
read handwriting.
Mm. Oh, that's amazing. And did she speak English to you?
Well, she passed away before I was born.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, wow. So you really were exposed to a lot of languages. And so now, do you use any of these words with your children? You mentioned sending it to your group chat. But what about the generation below you? Did any of them know these words?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. My nieces and nephews,
Oh,
those were the words they knew.
oh, got it.
Um, I will say I feel like my son, my middle son, has actually taken Arabic in high school, and he is strong with languages, and that's been a delightful connection between my parents and him. He calls them and will, try to speak to them in Arabic, and then they will spend most of the call fighting with each other about the right way to say something in Arabic, it's delightful.
Is
And
he learning standard Arabic?
he's learning, he was learning from a Syrian teacher.
Uh-huh.
Um, and now his teacher is Palestinian. They just changed, so that's also been an interesting change. She's also happens to be a Palestinian citizen. She's a Palestinian woman from East Jerusalem who is zooming into an Orthodox day school, which is really a whole interesting set of things.
Wait, she's the teacher of that class?
Yeah, they had a Syrian Jewish woman first teaching, and now they have this new teacher on Zoom.
Wow, really interesting.
It's
So
really
is this in the school that you're the head of?
no, this is
Oh,
their high school, and I'm the head of a lower school that's not connected to it.
got it. Okay.
But I will say I feel sad. Like I feel language is obviously such a deep and rich part of culture and history and identity. And I feel like I'm transferred it in a pretty thin way. Like I think my kids, and I actually think my nieces and nephews too, they use a lot of these words in like their jokes. And they're delightful in the way they make fun of their nonna, of their grandmother, who's called nonna because her family was Tunisian Libyan, and Libyan was an Italian colony, and so we got nonnas. And like it's very sweet. They love her and they make fun of her all the time, and also there's lots to make fun of because she speaks many languages, and her English was the last one she learned, and she really really likes idioms and really can't say them in English so at all. So there's a constant things. For example, something is malish, which you'd say in Arabic, like it's not a big deal, let it go. She'll say it's like water under a duck.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Okay.
Water under a duck. So anyway, so there's a lot of like teasing and joking and no words and stuff like that. And it's sweet and delightful, but I feel like it's also thin. And that's on me in a lot of ways. And it's not just the Arabic, it's the depth of the particular kind of Judaism that I feel has in large part been lost,
That's interesting because I've talked to some other interviewees who have much less of their ancestral language and have passed hardly anything, if anything, down to their children. And it sounds like you have passed a lot of these words down to your children.
I don't know. Were those folks, were their parents immigrants, or were they like second generation Americans?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that
Yeah.
is, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a generational effect, but I think
there's also nothing to go back to, right? It's like I mean, I guess there's a lot of Jews who have this experience from the Holocaust too, but these are not community with Jews anymore, right? Like there are Jews in Jerba, right? But there's no real Jewish community in Tunis, and definitely not in Baghdad, or and for sure not in Tripoli, where my grandfather is from. So it's like you want to hold on to things that nothing is passed along. Look, I know this from Judaism. I think all the time as a Jewish educator about what's sticky. And things with depth are sticky, right? And they're not sticky if you work on identity without depth. And like we know that, right? So that worries me about this.
Well, what would make it deeper if it was full sentences rather than words?
No, I don't even think it's necessarily, I think it would be deeper if I actually knew more. Not just the language, but like I actually knew more the history, the culture. More than that actually would be the Judaism, because it's not like there's so much about my parents and about who I am that is Arab, although you will never ever hear them define themselves as Arab, right? And there's a lot about it. I see it in myself and can I really see it in myself culturally in a lot of ways. But really we're Jewish Arabs.
Mm-hmm.
And we're never going to be Arabs again. We're going to be Jewish Arabs. And I think, I wish, and I still feel like I'm going to do this. I want to lean in to like the canon of Judaism from Arab lands. And not just like the little thing you do here or the little thing you do there, but more like the way that when I think about the kind of deep Judaism I want my kids to have, I want them to have a fluency. I want them to have fluency. I want them to have personal meaning. I want them to have joyful community, right? They don't have the Sephardi community because we take in a different sort of direction. Although it's interesting because my sons chose to go to the Sephardi minyan in their primarily Ashkenazi high school. And they really like it has given them, they know how to pray Sephardi. I think that has something that's part of fluency.
How did you learn that? Just from that minion or from your?
Just from that minion. But my second son, who is a good laner, he reads Torah well, won't lane there because he doesn't read with Sephardi trope, with Sephardi notes. But like we taught all of our kids to read Torah with Ashkenazi trope. I don't know Sephardi trope, so.
So was that a decision, a practical decision, or was it
Totally practical?
Practical, yeah.
Who was going to teach me Sephardi trope? At age 30. I mean, yeah. Now I kind of probably know who I would go to for that, but I'm not like that musically oriented. And
so you tutor your kids for their B'nai Mitzvah?
Oh God, we can't teach our children anything.
Right.
Yeah, like two Jewish educators who think all the time about Judaism and literally have to outsource everything that's taught to them. I had to come run the school, but I could never be their teacher.
Oh, I totally
so we hire, neighbors basically.
Yeah. So interesting, you're talking about depth in what you're transmitting to your children. So you said fluency. What about fluency in Sephardic Jewish English or North African Jewish English? Do you feel like your kids are getting that at all?
I don't know what that is.
Well, it's English with a bunch of words from North African Arabic, Judeo-Arabic, and Hebrew words used in specific ways, that kind of thing.
You'll know the answer to this, and I'm excited to ask you this. It seems like there is a dialect of English in Syrian communities, like in Brooklyn.
Yes.
There's definitely a dialect of Hebrew, right? But there weren't a lot of Tunisian Jews. There were a lot of Moroccan Jews, but they went all over the place. And relative, there were far fewer than there. I mean, forget about Poland. There were fewer than there were in Germany, probably. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I assume. So I'm not sure that there was ever a critical mass enough for that development. But tell me what you know about that.
Well, there was definitely a critical mass in Tunisia of Jews to create distinctive varieties of Tunisian Arabic. But in America, I think you're right that there's not a critical mass here. And so you're right, in Brooklyn, there's the Syrian community. And I think there are developing norms in Bukharian community and in Seattle, in the Ottoman Sephardic community there, they have a crystallized Sephardic Jewish English. But you're right, in LA, I haven't, and in LA, maybe there is a developing Persian Jewish English.
Yeah, I bet that's right.
but I don't know if Kahal Yosef uh, has a developed Jewish English with Iraqi
Yeah.
Judeo-Arabic influences, and certainly not in the community where you grew up, where it's mixed Sephardic from various parts of the Middle East and North Africa. So I don't know, but maybe that's something that can be intentionally developed.
Yeah. Can we
And
talk about that? The
yeah,
intentional development, a redevelopment of your identity. Like I sometimes feel inauthentic in my own identity. Like it's clearly authentic. I mean, I don't know how can it be non-authentic, right? But I feel like I would like to lean in and build some of this, but what does it mean to build back what you didn't already have in a way?
well, in
And
what way are you doing that?
I would love to take these 45 words and bring them into my children's life. And we have the kind of family where we can do that in hilarious ways, right? Like it will take, and they will make jokes with this and they'll make meaning with this and it'll come up in all sorts of ways. And then and I would love that because it would be, I can't even say why. I don't know. It would be like my grandparents, it would be, it would, I can't even articulate why that's important to me. I'm not even sure why. Maybe that's part of the problem. But
This
yeah,
this really is a therapy session, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I think that is a common thing for people to embrace their ancestral culture when they have a remove from it. The notion of the third generation return, and it's unclear whether that is a generational phenomenon or a historical phenomenon from the late 60s, early 70s. But we see that in continuing to happen in the children and grandchildren of immigrants. But re-embracing or embracing your ancestral culture in ways that maybe your parents had rejected, I think that's pretty common. Um,
yeah.
and so why does that feel, so you said it feels inauthentic to you?
No, I think so. It's so interesting how much is wrapped up in this. Which really, when you asked me about this, I said I had nothing to say, right? So this is very interesting to me. Um, I feel like there's a certain performance in it, you know, um, in some ways, like, I don't know, I believe in intentional education. So why can't I intentionally educate around this? And I also believe that performing the life you want to live is a way of living it, right? There's all sorts of performance in education and in raising families. Uh, and maybe there's a certain confidence that I feel like, or a right to it that I need to remind myself I have.
Mm, yeah, you
Yeah.
absolutely have the right to it. And the confidence, I think, is a different issue because that relates to language skill and how well you know a language. But again, you're not talking about imparting an entire language. You're talking about heritage words.
Heritage words, right?
And that's the goal of this podcast, to raise awareness that this is a phenomenon, that people are keeping parts of language, fragments of language alive, even generations after their family has stopped speaking that language. And embracing that as a phenomenon, I think, would be a healthy development for contemporary Jewish communities.
Yeah. And when you don't have, I mean, I guess I always try to think about like, would I want my students to do something like this, you know? Yeah, because I understand how important it is from the perspective of your own sense of anchoring in the world and all the benefits of that to be connected to your history, your personal history, when you can never go back to see where your great grandfather was buried or the home your mom grew up in or whatever it is. These are the things you carry with you. Um, yeah,
Yes, yes. And the Jewish Language Project has a curriculum for fifth to 12th grade called Beyond the Family Tree, Jewish History and Diversity Through Family, Languages, and Names.
I think I saw it today. Is it on the Jimena? It's on the Jimena website.
Yes, exactly.
I literally saw it today. I was having a call with somebody at Jimena who was trying to convince me to write an article, and I was like, I don't think I'm authentically smart enough, you know. And and now I'm going to lean in from these two calls today. But I saw that, and it's amazing. I'm
Oh,
really excited to. I'm really excited to use it.
oh, thank you. And it does exactly what you were talking about, making students aware of their ancestral history and, in interviewing people in the older generations, and then also sharing that information with their classmates and their classmates' families. There's a showcase at the end where families come together and learn about their community. And I think especially in New York, LA, Miami, big cities, Boston, in those places, the Jewish community has become more and more ancestrally diverse. In
Mm-hmm.
much of the country, it's still predominantly Ashkenazi, but in those big cities, it's not. And our schools need to recognize that and do, map their ancestral diversity and learn from each other, including heritage words.
Absolutely. We do, we have a heritage fair actually that is based on um, an artifact. Like every kid chooses an artifact from their family, and it's an incredible experience. And it's a way to look at your own, and everybody in our community is an immigrant that you can trace back to, right? Like that's Jewish day school. Um, Interestingly enough, actually also Jews by choice. Somehow all of our Jews by choice are also like recent immigrants in our school. So people have a lot to bring to the table. And it's showcased at something we call ANU, the Beit Rabban Jewish Heritage Museum. But we don't use heritage words as an element of that. We do research on our names and all sorts of things, but we've got to incorporate that. I
Yeah,
want to
that,
add something else that I'd love to hear you talk about, and I'm sure this podcast is close to over, but I'm dying to hear everything you have to say. Um, there's also an interesting thing of people who have like two countries back or two languages back now. We have so many Israeli Americans now in our community who are coming from Israelis whose parents were, from Arab countries or from Eastern Europe, whatever it is. And and they're coming with the Hebrew as well as the former language. That's
exactly.
also something to think about.
Exactly. Yeah. You have Israelis and also Latin Americans in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
guess Americans, like were we to move on, right,
Yeah.
to wherever, like this is definitely a culture that we would be bringing about.
That's right. That's right. Okay. You're right. We are almost done, but I want to make sure you have the last word. What else do you want to tell us about related to your ancestry, your community, your identity?
I just want to say there's something incredibly special to having a language that people around you do not understand, right? And you can't ever trust that somebody around you doesn't understand. I think a lot of American Jews have learned the hard way. Don't speak Hebrew somewhere public and think other people can't understand, but growing up in an environment where my grandmother would walk with me and say things quietly to me that clearly nobody around would understand, whether it was something like Fachzerainik or like this guy's crossing the street like Mijnun or whatever it is. There's something really special about that. There's an intimacy of something shared that's almost secret, and
Mm,
it's powerful.
beautiful. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us on Heritage Words today.
I'm so grateful that you gave me this free therapy session.
Okay, take care.
Goodbye, Sarah. This was amazing. I feel so grateful to you.
Oh, thank you. Heritage Words is a partnership of the Hebrew Union College Jewish Language Project and HUC Connect, supported by tax-deductible donations from listeners like you. I'm the producer and host, Sarah Bunin Benor. Kyle Elbaz Fingerhut is assistant producer. Avishay Artsy is editor. and Talia Ehrenberg is video editor. The music is from Maurice El Medioni's French and Algerian Arabic album Café Oran, featuring the Klezmatics David Krakauer and Frank London, courtesy of Piranha Records. This podcast is one of the many ways the Jewish Language Project raises awareness about the diversity of the Jewish people and the phenomenon of heritage words. We also have online crowdsourced dictionaries where you can find the words mentioned on the podcast. We post Jewish Word of the Week and fun facts on social media, and we offer free educational materials and exhibits that you can visit online or display in a synagogue, museum, or community center. Contact us about our live taping opportunities. Looking for gifts for Shabbat dinners and Passover seders? Check out our whimsical multilingual t-shirts, tote bags, stickers, and aprons. You can find all this content and donate, volunteer, or sign up for our email list at jewishlanguages.org. Thank you, merci mucho, soch boshi, rahmat, shukran, toda rabah, Ashenim Dank.